Hello, dear learners. Welcome to English with Fatiha, your school channel for loving English and connecting with the world.
Welcome to the Sense of Wellbeing podcast. This is Fatiha. Today, we're tackling a topic that sparks a lot of curiosity and concern: electromagnetic radiation, EMR, and its potential impact on our health, especially our hearts and brains. Today, we're delving into a topic that affects us all but is often overlooked: the effects of electromagnetic radiation on our health. Joining us is Dr. Daniel Wu, a renowned expert in bioelectromagnetics. Dr. Wu, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Fatiha.
Let's start with the basics, Dr. Wu. What exactly is electromagnetic radiation, and where do we encounter it in our daily lives?
Electromagnetic radiation, or EMR, is energy that travels and spreads out as it moves. We encounter EMR every day in various forms, including visible light, radio waves from cell phones and Wi-Fi, microwaves, X-rays, and more. Each type of EMR has different properties and potential effects on human health.
Interesting. So, EMR is everywhere. What concerns are there specifically regarding radio waves used in cell phones and Wi-Fi?
The primary concern with radio waves is their potential long-term health effects, especially as our exposure increases with the proliferation of wireless devices. The focus is mainly on non-ionizing radiation, which is less energetic than ionizing radiation like X-rays but can still affect biological tissues.
Let's dive into the brain first. How does exposure to EMR from cell phones and Wi-Fi potentially affect brain health?
Studies have shown mixed results. Some research suggests that prolonged exposure to EMR could potentially affect brain function, leading to issues like headaches, sleep disturbances, and cognitive impairments. However, the exact mechanisms are still being studied, and there's no definitive conclusion yet.
Can you elaborate on any specific studies or findings?
Certainly. For instance, a study by the National Toxicology Program found that high levels of EMR exposure could lead to the development of tumors in the brains of rats. Another study indicated changes in brain activity patterns in humans exposed to cell phone radiation, suggesting potential impacts on cognitive function and sleep patterns.
That's concerning. How about mental health? Is there any evidence linking EMR to conditions like anxiety or depression?
There are some studies suggesting a correlation between high EMR exposure and increased rates of anxiety and depression. However, these studies often have limitations, and more research is needed to establish a clear causal link.
Shifting gears to the heart, what are the potential effects of EMR on cardiovascular health?
The cardiovascular system can be affected by EMR through changes in heart rate variability and blood pressure. Some studies have reported that prolonged exposure to EMR can lead to alterations in heart rhythm, which may be a precursor to more serious cardiovascular issues.
Can you provide examples of specific studies or cases?
Sure. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine observed that people exposed to high levels of EMR had higher instances of arrhythmias. Another study noted changes in heart rate variability, suggesting that EMR could affect autonomic nervous system function, which regulates heart function.
What about long-term exposure? Are there any studies that look at the long-term cardiovascular effects of EMR?
Long-term studies are still ongoing, but preliminary data suggests that chronic exposure could potentially increase the risk of hypertension and other cardiovascular conditions. However, more extensive longitudinal studies are needed to confirm these findings.
Given these potential risks, what practical steps can people take to minimize their exposure to EMR?
There are several measures people can take, such as using speaker mode or earphones for phone calls, reducing the time spent on wireless devices, and keeping devices away from the body when not in use. Also, ensuring that Wi-Fi routers are placed away from living spaces can help reduce exposure.
Are there specific recommendations for vulnerable populations like children or pregnant women?
Yes, children and pregnant women should be particularly cautious. Limiting screen time, using wired connections when possible, and keeping devices away from the body can help reduce their exposure. Pregnant women should avoid placing devices near their abdomen.
What does the future hold for research in this field? Are there any promising developments?
Future research will likely focus on long-term studies and exploring the biological mechanisms underlying EMR effects. Advances in technology, such as 5G, will also drive new studies to understand their health implications better. Overall, the goal is to establish clear guidelines and safety standards.
That's encouraging. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
It's important to stay informed and take practical steps to minimize exposure. While the research is ongoing, being cautious and adopting safer habits can help mitigate potential risks.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Wu. This has been an enlightening discussion.
Thank you for having me.
That wraps up today's episode of The Sense of Well-Being. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember to take care of your health. Until next time, this is Fatiha, signing off.